Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Good Sunday evening. This is Will Coley with the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. We're here back again on a Sunday night on LRN. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. We're still waiting on Davi to drop in with us. He had the great fortune of going to the International Students for Liberty Conference this weekend. He was joined by a few of my colleagues, Mr. Rami Osman and Hisham El-Maligi from Muslims for Liberty. They were all there tabling. Davi actually gave a presentation on propaganda at the conference this weekend. And our first guest was also there. He provided some of the entertainment. From what I heard around social media from some of my friends who were there, he was particularly entertaining and extremely funny. He is comedian Jeremy McLellen.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, Jeremy. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
So I hear you had a pretty good response at the
it went really well.
festival.
Yeah, it went really well.
It's well, I guess it's odd to find a libertarian comic that's funny. I mean, basically so far it's Doug Stanhope and you.
Yeah, I mean Dave Smith is a comic in New York who's really good. And he's also a libertarian. I don't go around calling myself a libertarian comedian for the same reason that a lot of my friends who are Christians who do art don't call themselves, Christian musicians or whatever.
Yeah.
Just because there's a tendency to, Christian rock is mostly terrible. It's not good rock, and people, whenever they're in a niche, they think that it gives them a license to not be as good. And so a lot of people were very, very primed for me to be terrible this weekend. So I had a lot of people come up to me afterwards, and there was like, "Oh wow, we heard there was a comedian, and we were certain that he was going to be terrible, and you were actually really, really good." Like the deputy managing editor of Reason magazine tweeted that she was listening to a guy named Jeremy McLellen tell jokes at this conference, and believe it or not, or I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's actually funny. And so it was just like, I'm going to put that on all my things now. I'm going to have actually funny with Reason magazine, like a movie poster. But
right.
But there's a tendency among any sort of niche group, whether it's Christians or libertarians or socialists or anybody, to bill themselves as that, and then they have a tendency to not be as good because they only perform for people who agree with them. And this is the second. I'm broadly libertarian. Like I'm libertarian, like in general. I have differences with libertarians a lot, but broadly speaking, I'm libertarian. But this is only the second. I've been doing comedy for almost 3 years, and this is only the second libertarian conference I've done, and the only the second libertarian audience that I've had. So I perform lots of times a week for liberal audiences, and a lot of my jokes are not about politics. I'm just a regular comedian trying to be funny, and I also happen to a lot of my opinions overlap with libertarians, so I have that going for me.
You got to see if we can try to get you on at PorkFest this year. I would love to get to actually see you live.
Yeah, sure.
Because we'll be at that. Are you going to be at the national convention? Have you been invited?
I have no idea. I don't typically. So far I haven't gone to these conferences. This is only the second libertarian conference I've ever been to. And so, but I'm excited to get to know the people more, and especially if they book me, that would be great.
Awesome. All right, now the second guest that we've got is a very he's definitely a guy that we're really, really proud to actually get on the show as early as we have in our, our infancy. We're only, I believe, on episode 8. This is our second month on the air, the end of our second month on the air, and we were able to have the great fortune, the amazing blessing of having Dr. Yasir Qadhi to join with us.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure is mine.
And Assalamu alaikum, brother. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Tariq, for having me.
So, we've got Dr. Qadhi here, and when we have academics on, we usually try to spend a lot of the time that we have with them discussing different issues and getting an informed academic Islamic perspective on these issues, rather than having opinions thrown at us from different media sources and politicians and polemics from the left and the right. So one thing I'd like to cover, I right out of the gate, just to get it taken care of, in some libertarian and many conservative social media platforms, you see a video or an audio going around that purports to be Dr. Qadhi making some insane statements that were, well, if you have really, really good speakers, you just turn it up. You can hear how cheaply the audio was cut together. Boy, that was my mother-in-law calling from Africa. But before we get in, I'd like to give Dr. Qadhi the opportunity, because I know some of our listeners have probably seen the video or heard the video, to address that for us before we go, into
sure. There's frankly not much to address. If anything, it just shows how underhanded and how frankly conniving some segments of our population are, that some people quite literally cut and pasted together a fabricated audio clip. I mean, it's in my voice, but it's literally one sentence with another sentence cut and pasted to do a shoddy hit job, in which I kind of sound like a radical jihadist preaching, to kill the infidel. And I mean, I've given thousands of lectures online. I've been interviewed by like 1,000,001 stations and NPR and BBC and CNN. I mean, whoever wants to literally sit down and splice together a paragraph, believe me, they could have me say anything they want in my voice, So it's just a sad indictment of how desperate people are. I mean, the audio is so shoddy that when Fox News got a hold of it, they sent an investigative reporter down here to our mosque and our community. And when he himself heard the video or audio, excuse me, there's no video, heard the audio, Fox News dropped the story to basically do a hit job on me. That's how shoddy it is. Even Fox News' standards would not allow them to. So I think that's enough said there.
Right?
It's pretty. Yeah.
Well, actually, honest to God, you gave a lecture. I want to say it was probably 13 years ago, where you discussed. I think you were with Yasir Qadhi at an event, and you did a lecture on the maqasid, and it was one of the first lectures, like online lectures, that I saw after I became Muslim, and it's partially what put me on the path when I began studying toward learning the things that I learned. Like that lecture about the maqasid that you gave was kind of my first step in the direction of what is now the activism that we do through Muslims for Liberty, the show that we have here on the radio right now, and the listeners that are listening. One of the very first steps in that direction came from a lecture you gave where you discussed the natural rights, so to speak, in Islamic law.
Oh, I'm very humbled. I didn't know that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I actually remember that lecture. Yeah, it was it was a discussion about the Islamic view of natural law and the potential theory. Of course, it's a potential theory. It's debated in academia of how much of an impact that had on certain Enlightenment thinkers, and then obviously how that had an impact on the founding fathers. So awesome. There are some academics out there.
We'll get into that on the other side when we get right back on the Call to Freedom Live on LRN.FM. And we're back here on the Call to Freedom on LRN Live, Sunday night edition. We have been joined. We have two great guests tonight. We have Jeremy McLellen, comedian, and then we also have Dr. Yasir Qadhi with us tonight. Now, as we left, Dr. Coley was making a point. We were discussing a lecture that he had given that actually had been quite inspirational to me. Well, I guess it's been about 11 years ago now since I became Muslim, and shortly after that started the work that that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years now. That that study time from the beginning to the point that we started doing this activism was kind of inspired by a lecture that I had heard by him, and he was going into some of the finer points of that for us, if he would mind continuing.
Sure. So, I mean, in a nutshell, the impact of Islamic thought on medieval Europe is something that is well studied, and there are many interesting theories out there. And one of the theories that has been propagated, and there are a number of articles that back this up, was that the very notion that there are inalienable rights that people basically have endowed by their creator, this very notion seems to be more in line with medieval Islamic thought than with medieval European thought. And there is a possibility, and that was what my lecture was all about. And I'm saying it's a possibility, I'm not saying it's for sure, but there is a strong possibility that some of these very basic notions that we take for granted might actually have kind of organically translated down, especially after, ironically, the Crusades, because that was the first encounter that Europe had with Muslims since the early ages. So it's the European Crusaders might actually have been coming back with some of these notions that just because a person is born into a royal family doesn't give him the right to rule over us. Rather, the supreme God has given each and every one of us same dignity and the same human right. So it was just an interesting tangent saying that perhaps the very founding fathers' notions of individual liberty and rights might actually have had, through a convoluted history, I'm not saying there's a direct linkage, but definitely its origins appear to have been in medieval Islamic theology. And that's an interesting twist on the far right, if you like, who claim that, they're anti-Islam.
Well, you have the influence of Ibn Tufayl on John Locke, which is openly acknowledged. I mean, even if you go to the Mises Institute, they have their own wiki page, the Mises Wiki, and they have a chart that discusses natural rights. And right there in it, it specifically states that the concept of tabula rasa that was expressed by John Locke was influenced by the writings of Ibn Tufayl and Hayy ibn Yaqzan. So even liberty sites have acknowledged it. You have, John McDeasy, Rose Wilder Lane, Spencer McCullum. You have a number of different scholars who have acknowledged the opportunity for this. And then you have other historic facts that lend credence to this, like the commentary on Aristotle by Ibn Rushd was required reading in the first universities in Europe. So that means
absolutely. Go ahead.
Without Ibn Rushd, you have no Renaissance. You have no Enlightenment.
And what's interesting, you're talking about basically humanism coming from within the Islamic framework. There's an undeniable scientific influence. That's something that everybody can clearly see. And that's something that nobody who has even the basic knowledge of the history of science, arithmetic, algebra, the very term, algebra, many of the chemical terms, alkali, almost all of the stars that are still named in ancient Latin, they actually are coming from Arabic terminologies. So the irony here is that those people that are trying to dissociate the Western civilization from Islam, actually, they don't realize that much of our civilization here in the West actually does owe quite a lot to its influence, the Islamic influence on medieval Europe. And it's just ironic that we have these far-right guys claiming that, Muslims should go back where they came from, without even realizing that we wouldn't be here today had it not been for the Islamic influence. The very numbers that we use are called Arabic numerals because the whole system of having 10 numbers with the zero is coming straight from the Arabs and the Muslims. And we can go on and on and on about this.
Well, yeah,
there's like this.
Go ahead.
There's this idea of among these right-wing people of this pristine European, Western, white civilization that was untainted and not influenced at all from outside. And obviously that's false. But there's this. Like you find that in the United States, there's this. There's constantly this calling back to returning the country to the way it was or making it great again. It's this false history of a time when that never existed, but this time that captures people's ideas that like this is that there's this time when ideas and people weren't so mixed. There's this.
We must restore the glory of Rome.
Sure, yeah, and you find that, among Christians, you find that all the time when people talk about returning to the way it was in the early church, or this is, we have to return back to this there's this primitive, or not necessarily primitive, but this original, there's this place that we used to be, and then we fell from that. It's almost like the story of the fall. Like we used to be in Eden in America, and then the original sin was, I guess, immigration, or I don't know what it was, but
something
like that.
Larry Flint. There you go. The original sin was Larry Flint. They allowed pornography, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, or among very conservative Christians I grew up with, it really was. It was the 1970s when we took prayer out of public schools. And
well, yeah, that whole little era.
That's when America really started to fall.
Abortion, prayer, and pornography, like within like a 10-year stretch.
If you were a minority in the 1970s, you might think that America fell a lot sooner or a lot earlier than just the 70s. But
I was thinking it was somewhere around the time of the Whiskey Rebellion.
I think all American problems come from the Whiskey Rebellion. I think we can all agree
that was the point where the government decided to pull out a gun and point it at the people. That was the beginning of the downfall of America.
Anytime you're in a political debate, just bring up the Whiskey Rebellion, and that'll really win people over, I think.
Right.
It sounds like, I've been at this libertarian conference for 3 days, and it's funny. I agree, but it's just this funny thing where you never know where conversations are going to head.
Because it's so varied.
People just have this.
It's so varied. Like at a conference, I can talk to 50 people and have the same exact conversation 50 different ways. And we're going to have plenty more conversations when we come back here on the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. We're going to have Dr. Yasir Qadhi with us still for a couple more segments, and we'll see you guys when we get back. And we're back here live on LRN.FM on the Call to Freedom. It is 10:30 on a Sunday night, and one of my guests just finished up with the International Students for Liberty Conference. That's where my amazing co-host is absent tonight. And we also have with us tonight Dr. Yasir Qadhi from Memphis, Tennessee. Now, Dr. Coley, you were talking about, some of these connections, and we were, discussing some of these different historic connections with Islam. But there's some other things in your personal life, actually, that I wanted to get into. All of our listeners are familiar with a group called ISIS, or Daesh, or whatever mass murdering. I'll allow you to fill in the blank. We're all familiar with them, but Dr. Coley is a little more familiar than the rest of us because of the fact that he has been targeted by them. as an academic who is well respected among the Muslim community, particularly here in the United States. He's made some statements that they were not particularly happy with, and as a result of that, has you were targeted in their magazine, correct?
Yes, I had the dubious honor of being the only American Muslim professor to have a half-a-page color photograph of me in the magazine with, in essence, a call for my assassination.
You put that on your resume. That's great.
For real, yeah. I wish I could put that on my resume.
Yeah, I'd kill.
For real.
I'd love to have that kind of publicity.
That's a badge of honor, you know. I mean, that's like getting attacked by, for a Muslim activist that, like, in the United States, that's like getting attacked by Robert Spencer or Pam Geller on television level, like, badge of honor. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not something to complain. That's like, yes. I mean, well, not yes, because, you know, you have to worry about your family and that kind of thing, but as far as credibility with at least with me and with our listeners,
you know the irony is that I have been targeted by Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer on their web pages, not on television yet, but on their web pages multiple times, and it really truly is mind-boggling to me to this day that the far right wants to paint me as a radical jihadist and a stealth killer. And radical Muslims and the ISIS is painting me as a peacenik, a patriotic American who wants to basically, wants to support the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. So each of the two extreme groups is painting me the exact opposite, and they both have death threats against me. Go figure.
Right. That's
plus, I mean, comedians often joke. People ask us, like, if we, like, because we'll receive death threats for, like, jokes, and people will get really upset at us and stuff, and people are like, oh well, and it's sort of a running joke among comedians that, like, we don't want to die, but if one of us ever did die, like, if ISIS killed me, like, I'd be the most famous comedian, like, ever. Yeah. Like, if ISIS killed me. So, like, I don't want to die, but if I do, what a way to go.
For real, and imagine the, Van Gogh wasn't everywhere until after he was gone.
Sure.
So, I mean, the staying power and of the amount of people you could probably reach would, I bet, triple if that kind of
so the key is for me to fake my death.
Yeah, there you go.
By ISIS, and then I'll be able to see all the benefits.
I mean, half the CIA videos look faked anyway. Just call them and ask them who their audio and video guys are, and I'm sure you pay them $5-6 grand, and they could put you one of those videos together too.
Is that do I just go to the CIA website and book the video there? Just
probably. The next time they run one of those advertisements for crisis actors, I'm sure I'll
message them on Facebook. Yeah, right. I'll message them.
So yeah. Now I wanted to get into a couple of questions with you, Dr. Qadhi, while I had you here. Sure. There are different issues that are particularly important to the listening audience that, range from medical cannabis, which I've actually seen you recently share an article about, and I've heard other sheikhs discuss in the affirmative as well. But there's an issue that I've seen in particular here lately, particularly with the upcoming election, that kind of irks me a little bit, and it's the use of the comparison of income taxes to the zakat in Islam. And I was wondering, is that from a fixed standpoint, is that a fair comparison to compare the zakat tax to the income tax? And is there anything like an income tax as it exists in Islam, in America, in classical Islamic jurisprudence?
So zakat is, of course, the necessary charity that Muslims are required to give. So every ethical and God-conscious Muslim gives a percentage of his money to the poor and to the orphans every single year. That's one of the pillars of Islam. It's called zakat. Zakat is actually not income tax. We don't tax our income. We tax our savings in the Islamic religion. So at the end of every Islamic year, because the Islamic year is different than the Christian year, it's a lunar year, it's around 355 days. at the end of every Islamic year, Muslims assess their savings that they have had for the entire year, and they then give a percentage of that for the poor. So there's some similarities, but there's some differences. And the income tax that we pay, of course, one of the most important differences is that we are required by our ethical law, by our religious law, to make sure that the money is delivered to genuinely bona fide, certified poor people. Our zakat cannot go to fund wars, God forbid. Our zakat cannot go to, we have to give our money to the widows and orphans and hungry people. So there are some similarities and differences, but it's not an income tax. It is a tax on savings. It's a charity on savings that is given to the poor.
Okay. Now, is there, from your perspective, and I've heard Sheikh Hamza Yusuf gave a lecture one time where he stated that there is no income tax, that the income tax itself is forbidden. But I know he follows, I believe, Maliki jurisprudence, and I'm not sure which.
Yes. The majority of scholars, actually almost all scholars of classical Islam said this, that the state does not have the right to take your money. Now, this is, of course, I'm talking about Islamic law. I'm not talking about American law. I'm talking about medieval Islamic law, that in an Islamic society, the state does not have the right to your money. That's your money that you've earned, and the state is not allowed to get its expenses from your money. It can tax other things, but not income tax, right? It can tax maybe imports or something like that, but it's not technically, and this is not just the Maliki school, this is pretty much mainstream Islamic law would say that an Islamic land that is ruled by the laws of the religion of Islam would not be able to tax personal income tax. So yes, that aspect is correct.
Very cool. So, now, let's see, another issue: freedom of speech. Now, this is an issue that is, always on the minds of people. People like to talk about it a lot when it comes to Islam, because you have the whole Charlie Hebdo, the attack in Garland, Texas, the attack on the artist who was associated with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Theo Van Gogh. And the assumption is, because of the actions of these individuals, that it is somehow a sunnah to use force against those whom you feel have insulted you or have insulted your faith. And I heard you give a lecture recently, actually, where you covered this topic fairly well, and I was hoping you could go into that for our listeners.
Sure. In fact, it was that very lecture that caused ISIS to issue its death warrant against me, right? So,
all right, well, we're going to actually have to get to that when we come back on the other side here on the Call to Freedom, live on LRN.FM. All right, we are back here on the Call to Freedom, live on LRN.FM. It's about a quarter till 11, and we have been joined tonight by comedian Jeremy McLellen, as well as Dr. Yasir Qadhi, who's with us from Memphis. And Dr. Qadhi was just starting to get into the story. We were discussing, free speech in Islam, and the use of force against those who insult you or your faith. And he said that actually his lecture on that is the reason why he was had a threat made on his life by ISIS. So, with no further ado, Dr. Qadhi, back to you.
So after ISIS did its attack in Paris against the cartoonists, and they justified it Islamically, so I gave a sermon that was basically it went viral from my webpage and my YouTube channel, and in it I Islamically deconstructed their argument, and I took the position that it is un-Islamic, it's against the teachings of Islam to, in effect, take the law into your own hand and do as these people did. And even though, of course, it pains me when somebody wants to smear the Prophet in such a manner, but in the end of the day, it's a free country and land, and if they want to do that, well, then, frankly, that's their loss. I mean, I can't physically do anything against them. I have the right to not like it, to hate it even. That's my right. I have the right to criticize this and say that's not very polite and nice, but I don't have the right, Islamically speaking, to do anything more than that. And that was the sermon that I gave, and I backed it up with evidences from the faith tradition. And of course, it was something that they didn't like, and because it went viral and because it was, I believe, very effective in deconstructing their arguments, they responded the only way that terrorists know how to respond, and that is by threats of violence. And that was when the death threat came.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's usually the place where you know that you've won the argument, is when the other side either devolves into ad hominem attack or devolves into threats and violence. I mean, that's how you know you won. And if that's not how you know, that's definitely how the audience knows that you've won. Like when you're in social media and people are having a debate, the side that starts screaming, cursing, throwing insults, and threatening violence, yeah, they're the side that lost.
Precisely the point. Yep. In fact, they proved themselves basically incapable of having a logical argument. They could not respond to my lecture except by calling for my assassination. And I think that demonstrates the mentality of those types of people.
And the validity of your message versus that of theirs.
I would definitely hope so, yes. So,
yeah, I'm really glad that we had got the opportunity to have you on here with us this evening. It was
great.
It's definitely been an honor. I'm actually kind of disappointed that Davi, my co-host, wasn't able to make it on with us so that he could be involved in having the opportunity to ask you a few questions for our listeners tonight. Is there anything in particular that you've got coming up that you'd like to promote? Websites, Facebook page?
We actually, in Memphis, Tennessee, we're actually doing something. Even if the viewers can't do it themselves in Memphis, the listeners, at least they should do something similar. We're having an open mosque ceremony on March 5th, where we're inviting our neighbors and our co-workers to come and check a mosque out and see that, we're not hiding any bombs. We're not doing anything other than any other faith community. And my simple message to everybody out there is that go straight to the source and go meet a Muslim or go and walk into a mosque and see for yourselves. We're just as human and just as American and just as everything as everyone else. And, you just don't believe the hype and don't believe enemies when they spread lies against people they don't like. Go straight to the source and intermingle and mix with people, and you'll see that essentially all humans, really, it's not even a matter, all human beings have the same aspirations and hopes. They just want to live together and have a good time, even if they have different theological beliefs. But no one wants to bring about a bad society, at least no mainstream religion or organization. And that's the reality across the world. So don't believe the lies and just meet Muslims and walk into mosques and see for yourselves what the religion is all about.
Absolutely.
Right. You got a website or something you want to promote for us if we want to keep?
Well, I have my Facebook. My Facebook is what I usually post my political commentary and my religious commentary on, and it's coming close to 1 million people. I hope within this year it'll get to 1 million. It's facebook.com YASIR.QADHI Yasir.Qadhi, which is my name. So just log on to that and subscribe, and you'll get my analysis, my updates, my personal thoughts, my religious updates all together on the Facebook page.
All right, very good, very good. So, if you're interested in learning about Islam, I would really encourage you to go to YouTube, look up some of this of Dr. Qadhi's YouTube videos. Look up the video on the Maqasid that I talked about. That was probably 13 years ago that you gave that lecture.
I wouldn't even remember. I've given thousands. It's just vaguely. I know it was a long time ago. I don't know what.
But yeah, I would definitely go and take a look at his YouTube channel. Take the opportunity to go sign up and be a part of seeing his updates in social media and Facebook. Once again, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so very much for coming out and being a part of this episode with us tonight, Dr.
Yeah,
Qadhi.
thank you so much. It was an honor meeting you, and I hope to interact with you more in the future.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you for having me. It was honestly a pleasure, and have a good evening.
You too. You too. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So yeah, that was definitely an enjoyable experience. I was glad. Yeah, he's gone now. There he goes.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, he's amazing, and definitely like there's probably 5 big names in Islamic scholarly today, 5 or 6, and they're like Bon Jovi in the 80s level of like people following them, and you know they hate the term rock star imam, but it really is the easiest like cultural thing in American culture that you could compare like, their popularity to, and he's definitely in the top 5, like easily hands down. And a lot of people respect him, and you know we've had a number of big name scholars on now, and all of them over and over again have reasserted the same thing about the very core tenets of libertarianism existing within the Islamic framework before there was a libertarianism by that name.
Right.
So, well, I guess I got to rid of him a couple minutes faster than I needed to. It's like, okay, it's like 10:54. It's time. And there's still no music. So when we get back, we're going to take off. We're going to talk about the debates.
Cool.
The debates, the Libertarian debates were last night. 5 contenders. There have been a number of polls. I personally thought Daryl W. Perry did really well. I'm not really a big fan of Austin Peterson simply because of his position on the non-aggression principle, but you know, I thought he performed well last night as well. I thought Gary Johnson was Trump's second cousin. McAfee was good but not great, and the other guy was, who was the other guy? You know, so we're definitely going to get into that when we get back. There have been a couple of the news stories that have been going around that I definitely want to touch on when we get back. And I, you know, I love your take on some of these different.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and start talking about the debate for just a second.
Okay. Cool.
So they started out with like 12 people.
Okay.
I guess. And the lighting was crap. It looked like, you know, like I've seen just simple high school plays that were better audio and visual quality than this. Like at a high school or a middle school. You know what I'm saying? Like it was terrible. You couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, what is I don't know what the
Well, I mean, one of the articles that came out today was like, would the Libertarian Party please get your crap together? I mean, that's not exactly how they put it, but, you know, that's the FCC ready version. So, I mean, everybody noticed it. And I went in when it first started, and basically what happened was people would log in, and they would see how terrible the feed was, and they would look at the commentary over in the feed, and they would make their own comment about how terrible the feed was, and then they would leave. And that was pretty much how it went while we waited for the debate to get started. And you'll have to wait for us to get into anything else on that till we get back on the other side here on the Call to Freedom on LRN live Sunday nights. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back here on the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. We just had a great interview with Dr. Yasir Qadhi. I believe he works with the Al-Maghrib Institute, plus he is an imam of a fairly large mosque in the Memphis area. And as we were headed out, we started talking about the Libertarian debates last night. And I wanted to pay a little bit of attention to one of the candidates, Mr. Gary Johnson. Now, Gary has enjoyed some star power due to his million votes that he received in 2012. It's made him a bit of a celebritarian, so to speak, among the liberty community because of his ability to pull that turnout. And I think that that's kind of gotten to his head a little bit. He seems very much to me to try to be currently courting what I like to call the Libertarians for Trump crowd of the Libertarian Party, which, too bad for him, actually isn't that large of a contingency of the Libertarian community. Now, I've got a clip queued up here last night. I really wasn't sure at this point in the debate what party's debate I was at. For a minute here, I thought that maybe Donald Trump or Ted Cruz was on stage, and we were suddenly watching the Republican debate on Fox News. But I'll go ahead and play this clip for you. Why isn't it working? I don't know why it's not working. Huh. All right then. Well, we're having some technical difficulties. We'll have to figure out what's going on with that and why that's not working right now. But we do still have Jeremy McLellen with us from. That's why it's not working. Is because I had that muted because Jeremy was over there. So we'll go ahead and now I'll play that clip since I've figured out what I was doing wrong.
We're going to attack back. Now, with regard to our foreign interventions, are we making the situation better or worse in the world because of our foreign interventions? We're making things worse. And I would like to point out, I would like to make America aware of the following, is that we are all in favor of freedom of religion. No ifs, ands, or buts. We are all for Islam, all right? Freedom of religion. But we need to distinguish between freedom of religion, which is Islam, and the politics of Sharia. Sharia is a political system that allows for people, starting with women's rights, to be beaten, allows for gays to be hung, allows for people to be put to death. It allows for women to be put to death with honor killings. Sharia is a system of government. It's politics. We need to distinguish between freedom of religion and the politics of Sharia, and all of the extremism is coming from the politics of Sharia.
So yeah, that was Mr. Gary Johnson last night at the Libertarian debate in Mississippi, I believe it was. So yeah, in my opinion, it's Trump light. You know, the assertions that were made here, the accusations that were made here are completely frivolous. Honor killings would be considered vigilantism, which would be completely forbidden in Islam. There have been honor killings in Islamic countries. You can actually Google honor killings in Egypt, and you can find the criminal sentences and the death penalties that have been handed down to fathers who committed honor killings against their daughters. So this isn't something that's supported by Islamic law. It's something that happens in some countries. It's actually something that, if you read the histories, existed in pre-Islamic Arabia and was specifically condemned in the Quran. O men, do not kill your daughters. It specifically says those words, do not kill your daughters. So this is something that existed in Arab culture previous to Islam, but was outlawed by Islam itself, in the Quran specifically. So that assertion is completely and totally baseless. The assertion that women are supposed to be or allowed to be beaten by Sharia, there are those who make that argument. There are some Muslim scholars who have made that argument. There are other Muslim scholars who have made the argument that it is allowed, but it can't be what would be defined by most people as beating. It would be more like, as one put it, to tap with a handkerchief.
Well, so what's the what's the fear? The fear is that Muslims will move to the United States and then they'll vote, and then the laws will change to. I mean, not saying
basically
not saying that the laws that the people would want are, you know, true or false Islam. I'm not Muslim, so I can't really speak to that. But that's the fear, is that, you know, you get enough Muslims in Houston, and then they'll vote for, you know, Sharia, and then.
Well, yeah, the argument is that
how is that going to work?
Somehow, 0.8% of the population are secretly working behind the scenes to overthrow the United States government and install a Saudi Arabian style legal system.
Right. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah. And I guess the fear of that. I mean, it goes to just. You know, that's a very low likelihood event. And politics right now in the United States, everyone's afraid. And so politics right now is all about trying really, really hard and changing society and changing our laws. And, you know, in order to prevent things from happening that are extremely unlikely to happen anyway.
Well, I think it gives.
And that's basically what American politics has been for, you know, since 9/11.
I guess it gives the government the opportunity to look like it's doing something. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're solving a problem that doesn't really exist, and you can just like make it up as you go along to scare people, then you can just do something, because if there's real problems that you don't have the ability to fix, you have no idea what to do to fix them, then the next best thing is to get everybody scared about a problem that doesn't exist, and then do something about that. So at least it looks like you're doing something.
Sure. I mean, if they really wanted to save lives, they could put tons and tons of money into developing driverless cars, which is, you know, would save a lot more lives than whatever they're trying to do. You know, it's just they're trying to get elected, and they're trying to signal to. I mean, it's all about signaling. It's about signaling to. So Gary Johnson, you know, from that clip. He's trying to sound tough. He's trying to sound not politically correct. And he's trying to, and he might be trying to keep libertarians who are scared, you know, from going to Trump by being like, hey, you can still be a libertarian. I'm still. And so for that, I mean, that's just cynical. But I mean, I don't trust politicians. It doesn't matter who they are. Yeah. So. I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012, and from the looks of it, I'm probably not even going to vote in this election. But if I do, I won't tell anyone who I voted for. So
we endorsed Gary in 2012 after Ron Paul dropped out of the race.
Yeah.
So
I liked him, and I got. It was sort of funny, but I tried to buy my place in line. I got to the or sell it. I was in line. I was in the front, and this rich guy walked in, and I said, you know, I'll switch with you, because I had nothing to do that day. I was like, I'll switch with you and let you go to the front for $50. And he was like, okay, great. And they got really angry with me for trying to sell my place in line, which was a very libertarian thing for me to do. So they could probably tell I was voting for Johnson.
Right. So. All right. Well, when we get back, we'll be going over that and a whole lot more. We'll get back. We'll get into some more discussion about the debate and a few more issues here live on the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. And we're back here on the Call to Freedom, live on LRN.FM. It is a wonderful Sunday night, and I am joined by the comedian, Jeremy McLellen.
How's it going?
I'm good.
Good.
So, yeah, when we left, we were talking about the debates and, you know, politicians using fear-mongering and talking points as a way to get elected rather than substantive arguments for the issues at hand. And one thing though that came out of it that I was actually quite happy about was every other candidate on stage took turns smacking him upside the head for what he had to say.
That's good.
So immediately Austin Peterson, who I've seen him around Facebook. I'm not a really big fan of his. More so after the debate now than I was before. Looked at him and was like, "You're at the wrong debate, Gary." Like this. Yeah, that's fine. This is the wrong place for you. Stop with the fear mongering. Scary. You sound like everybody's crazy drunk uncle that's going to vote for Trump, and everybody doesn't want to invite to holiday parties.
Yeah.
The Illuminati and the Muslim Brotherhood and the lizard people are all going to get us. David Icke said so.
Yeah.
David Icke said so. Pamela Geller told me that if I didn't buy her new book, that the Muslims were going to take over. And I bought it. Both literally and figuratively. So, that was a good thing. Outside of that, I've seen, there were, Darryl Perry was the only one who I think gave a libertarian tax plan, which was none.
He just wanted zero taxes.
Yeah, no income tax.
He wanted to install anarcho-capitalism in the United States.
Yeah, I love. Okay. Well, actually, I heard.
And why not? He's not going to get elected, so.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing is that he took a different route than everybody else, which is something I respect because if you're a libertarian and you're running and you're telling the people that you're running that you're gonna win, you're lying to them. You're not gonna win. There's no way on earth that. But
then there's no incentive.
Even if you won the popular vote, there's no way.
Reasonable at all. There's no, they can be as, it's almost just like, in one sense it's good. They can be free to say whatever, like they know they're going to lose, so they can be free to say whatever they want. But, on the other hand, I don't like that. I don't necessarily like that attitude. If you give it up, that's fine, but libertarians are 5% of the United States. And,
give or take, yeah.
And that's generous. And I think that, the way that libertarians have approached things, in trying to be like the purest, and I'm broadly libertarian, and so I'm not ideologically pure at all.
Yeah, I'm a voluntarist.
but I'm not. So I get sort of. I get a little tired of the everyone trying to one up each other on how libertarian they are, like getting into the minutia of stuff, and I think that liberty is something that matters to the other 95% of people, and if you can't. If you don't have a pitch for why libertarianism or why liberty or whatever improves their lives and why they would be better off with it, if you only have, it violates the non-aggression principle, whatever lingo you want to use. If that's all you got, then we're going to be stuck at 5% for the next 100 years.
Well, what I liked about Darryl's promise was he's like, I'm not promising to get 1% or 5% or 50% or win an election. I'm promising that what I will do is, regardless of how many votes I get, I will take a principled libertarian position. I will advocate the ideals of freedom and liberty as loud as I can, as often as I can, from wherever I can. To spread the message that basically that this isn't our year, you know. It's Bernie's year or it's Trump's year. It's not our year, and we know that.
Think that he's going to go around and preach anarcho-capitalism, and then in 100 years people will be. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I'm very pessimistic about the way that.
Well, I don't want to see someone who's a libertarian that's advocating anti-libertarian positions, because that just kind of like, well, then why? You know, like why? If we wanted people Republican and Democrat positions, then we would go and we would be Republicans and Democrats. Like that's why we're not a part of those parties, is because they had principles that they claimed to advocate for, and they didn't. None of their candidates lived up to them. You know, so then we come to libertarianism, and it's like, okay, well, this is something, and they believe in this, and everybody believes in it. Oh, wait, then none of their candidates believe in what the people believe in. You know, so it's like, well, what's the point then? You know, of
but if you're running for president to rule if you're running for president as a libertarian, you're running for president to rule the other 95%. Of people, and so I mean, I think there does have to be a pitch to them for why they should support your position. And if your position is, if your position on healthcare is, vote for me and I'll abolish the healthcare you have or whatever, like you got to have a pitch to that. And I don't think it can just be. Like a purity test or non-aggression principle. It has to be, actually explaining to people like why liberty would be good for them. And if you can't do that, then
Well, I think that's what the Libertarian Party's nomination process really at this point in the game should be about, is who can best articulate that message without injecting it with unlibertarian ideas. We act like I think libertarians act like we're almost there, and so we need this pure. But we're not. We're nowhere near there.
System to give people.
Well, see,
the United States is not even close, and so
that's Daryl's argument. Is what I'm saying. Is Daryl's argument is this isn't our year. Like, no matter how much we want to tell ourselves it is, and like jump up and down, like this isn't our year. It's Trump's year or Bernie's year, take your pick, but it's not our year. So what we need to do is pick the best qualified candidate to articulate the ideas of liberty while we have that stage. And when we come back, we'll keep articulating the ideas of liberty right here on the Call to Freedom live on LRN.FM. And we're back here on the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. Also broadcasting live on IPMNation.com. We've had a really awesome conversation tonight. We had Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, who was on with us for a little while earlier. Had the opportunity to talk about his views as far as Islamic jurisprudence on the income taxes, as well as his statements against the Paris attackers, earning him death threats, as well as a half-page ad calling for his assassination in ISIS's monthly magazine. And we also had hanging around for most of the show as my guest co-host tonight, comedian Jeremy McLellen.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, man. It was really nice having you tonight. Jeremy's going to have to go. He's got an early flight tomorrow. But before he goes, I want you to take the opportunity, Jeremy, to talk yourself up and plug your websites and your next show and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so if you if you go to Facebook, go to Jeremy McLellen Comedy, McClellan is spelled McLellan, so just one C. Jeremy McLellen Comedy, and JeremyMcLellen.com is my website. Look me up on YouTube, or you can just Google me, and you'll find all that there. I'm a stand-up comedian, and that's about it.
All right, man. It was really nice having you around tonight. I do look forward to seeing you at one of the events that we'll be at the National Convention in Florida on Memorial Day weekend. Then we'll be broadcasting live from PorkFest all week that week.
Okay.
I'll be at PorkFest, so if you have the opportunity to come to that, that would be awesome. You can come experience what it's like to do what you did today for 7 days. Outside most of the time in the rain. No. It's a lot of fun. It is. It's a blast, and you get to see all the everybody that you saw at ISCFL that was like a big name, like with Reason Magazine and stuff like that. Usually will be there, and you'll have like Jeffrey Tucker and whoever gets nominated for the presidential spot for the Libertarians will most likely be there. So it'll be a lot of fun. So I'd love to see you there, and maybe. Maybe I'll drop your name to one of the organizers and see if they'll contact you about coming out to perform for everybody.
Yeah, get me booked, man. Get me booked.
I don't know if I can get you booked, but I'll definitely suggest you.
All right, awesome.
So yeah, this was Jeremy McLellen. Thanks for coming on with us, bud, and you have a great night.
All right. Thank you so much. See you later.
Take care.
Yep.
All right. Well, now you guys are stuck with me. So, that's not the only thing that happened this week. There was another story that came out of Oklahoma. Libertarians in Oklahoma took it upon themselves, along with other interfaith activists, to go. It's called Muslim Capital Day. We talked about it last week. They went. This year, the protesters numbered in around 4. Versus last year where there were dozens of them, and there were easily 200 or 300 people who were there in support of the community, and of their right to attempt to engage with their leaders or masters, or depending on the listener's opinion of what that was. But we're glad to announce that there was really no protest this year. Now, there's another story that's going around right now that has gotten a lot of attention. It didn't get very much attention at the beginning. I believe it was on Wednesday. 3 gentlemen were before the social justice warrior police and the Muslim community come out and call me a racist. 3 black Muslim individuals were murdered, execution style, in an abandoned house in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on Wednesday, I believe. Now, the murder went basically uncovered by the mainstream media until the 28th. That would be today. So, yeah. So that would be today. Al Jazeera actually called out the American mainstream media in an article, I want to say yesterday. But then that bears to mention that, well, Al Jazeera, you only covered it yesterday. So my personal opinion is that unlike the murder in Carolina, which happened about a year ago, this is a completely different situation. The murder in Carolina, a guy went next door to his neighbor's house and shot them down in cold blood, supposedly over a parking space. These were college students, dental student, big pillars of the community. Everybody knew them. These are 3 guys that were shot in the back of the head in an abandoned house that was a known drug house in the area. Now, that's not saying that they were involved in drugs. They may have been involved in a bad drug deal, and they may not have been. It could have been that, there's a local that knows that if someone was killed there, that the immediate assumption would be that it was a drug deal gone bad, and that's why they lured these gentlemen there and murdered them. But the facts aren't in. but I'm seeing from leftist activists all across social media accusations of community-wide racism in the Muslim community, that because the victims were not Arab, that because the victims were not white, and because the victims were not Asian, so because the victims were black, there hasn't been the amount of public outcry over this as there was over the Carolina, the Tar Heel murders of the three Muslim students, the newlyweds and the sister, that happened about a year ago. So now you have these, the left social justice warriors going around literally insulting an entire religious community because of the fact that they're waiting for the facts to come out on the case. They don't know that these were three, martyrs who were killed because of their faith or anything like that. They don't know. And because they don't want to act as though they are, and then it come out that they're not, and now they are sitting there with egg on their face because they reacted in this way without all the facts. Now there are cries of racism against an entire religious community from the same people who are like, no, you're not allowed to judge people based on the color of their skin or based on their religion. But now, again, you have those same people doing exactly what they say that they condemn in others. So it's just a sad time in this country where now nothing that can happen do we have to have all the facts on before we start using it as a political club to beat whoever we feel needs to be beaten to death with a political club. Every time there's police violence now, every time that you see violence like this, where there are Muslims killed or where there's a mosque fire or where there's things like this, anytime that kind of thing happens, you have these political opportunists that want it to be centered around their particular pet issue, and they will go out of their way, regardless of the truth of the matter, regardless of the facts that are surround the matter, to create a narrative that supports their victims of choice. So when we get back, we'll be talking about a case that's I've been working on. We're making a national call, a little activism of my own, when we get back on the Call to Freedom on LRN.FM. And we're back here on the Call to Freedom live on LRN.FM. Now, there's a story coming out of Florida that I wanted to get into tonight. I've actually started a national campaign built around this story. It is out of Titusville, Florida. And there's an article in Florida Today that came out, I believe, on Friday that I'm going to read to you guys. Now, this is from Brevard County in Florida. It states, an attack using raw bacon and a machete could potentially garner a Brevard County man up to life in prison as a result of a recently added hate crime enhancement, according to authorities. Michael Wolf, 35, charged with armed burglary of a structure and criminal mischief of a place of worship in connection with the New Year's Eve break-in and desecration of the Islamic Society of Central Florida Masjid al-Mu'mineen Mosque in Titusville, Florida. Now, police said that the convicted felon acted alone, broke into the empty mosque with a machete at night, slashing at windows and other property before leaving behind a slab of raw bacon in and around the front door. A surveillance video shows Wolf dressed in camouflage pants and carrying a backpack as he stepped into the carport at the mosque. The attack, one of several acts of vandalism reported at Islamic centers across the country, drew national attention from advocacy groups like the Council of American Islamic Relations. The incident left many in fear at the small 50-member congregation. Wolf remains held at the Brevard County Jail without bond and is awaiting trial. Quote, our changing decisions confirm how seriously we take crimes of this nature when further investigation shows a crime is clearly hate motivated. It will not be tolerated, end quote, said State Attorney Phil Archer, who could not comment directly on the case. The state's attorney's office reviewed the case and brought formal charges against Wolf earlier this month. Both charges now carry hate crime enhancements, which means the potential sanctions in the event of a conviction are increased in the case. And of the armed burglary charge, Wolf could now face up to life in prison if found guilty of the charge. Although the case and any sentencing still hinges on whether a plea deal is reached, Wolf's prior record and the discretion of the judge. Imam Muhammad Musri, who oversees a network of mosques in Central Florida, that the network is the Islamic Society of Central Florida that they mentioned earlier, says he lauded the state's attorney's office effort to pursue the case as a hate crime, saying, quote, we have been hoping for that to happen. It was clearly a hate crime, end quote. Obviously, we were lucky that no one there was there that night. He had a machete. Someone could have been killed. Right now, we are trying to recover and reassure people, Musri said. They misspelled his name. Musri said, a trial date has not been set. So basically, a burglary for the purpose of vandalism will now possibly carry a life sentence because of a hate crime enhancement. Now, I'm not a proponent of hate crime laws, personally. I think that any act of violence that you commit against another person, the motivation in some degree is hate. Either you have a vicious disregard for their rights, which in my opinion is a form of hate, or you hate that person in some way. Either at that moment you hate that person because they're sleeping with your wife, or because at that moment you hate that person because of the fact that they are have a lifestyle or they're a race or a religion that you don't like. Regardless, any of these things are motivated by the same types of emotions. And in order to state that, well, if you commit this crime against this group or that group motivated by hate, then you now can get life in prison for something that should only garner you about 7 years. Why? It doesn't make any sense to me, because the motivating emotion, the central motivating emotions, a visceral disregard for your rights, is all the same, regardless of the central point behind it. And because of the fact that this guy is looking at life in prison, that is inappropriate from an Islamic perspective, because of the fact that he basically broke a little bit of property and desecrated the mosque. And we know that there are stories in the Sunnah of Bedouins coming in and literally urinating in the prayer hall. So we know that there is precedent in the Islamic legal tradition. When the Sahaba, when the companions of the Prophet saw the man do it, they immediately were sparked to violence, and his reaction was for them to calm down, to chill out, to let him talk to the guy, and pour a bucket over it and clean it up. That was his reaction. Don't hit him. Don't harm him. Don't scream and curse at him. Let me speak to him in a calm and rational manner, and you go clean it up, and let's deal with this in a better way. And even with the property damage that was done, Islamically, you're not allowed to punish in a higher degree than what you were harmed. And I'm sorry, but some broken windows and a little bacon thrown around the masjid that had to be cleaned up is not a degree of harm that's high enough that I am willing to say that you should risk this man's life for what basically was vandalism. So what we've been doing is we've been calling on Muslims for the last 3 or 4 days all over the country to call Imam Musri and ask him to forgive and have the criminal charges dropped, and rather to pursue civil charges against this man in order to get the cost back for the damage that was done to the sanctuary, as well as some punitive damages for grief and suffering, since evidently the community has been put in a huge state of shock for this. And leave it at that, because a man's life is not worth some vandalism. A few windows, a few ripped up pieces of carpet, and a little bacon in the doorway is not worth a man's life. It's absolutely insane. And we would actually ask our listeners, if you may not agree with some of our content, you may not agree with some of our positions, you may not like that there's a Muslim on a libertarian radio show, but at this point, I would ask and implore you to make a respectful phone call and just remind him that it's a sunnah to forgive people. That even when there was a case where there's a story by Anas ibn Malik where a man brought a man to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "This man has killed my brother." And there was a trial, and the whole thing happened, and the man was convicted. And when the conviction was set and they were ready to take the man to be executed, the Prophet ﷺ looked at the brother and said, "You should forgive this man so he doesn't lose his life." And the man said that he wanted blood. He wanted vengeance. He was motivated by a desire for vengeance. And the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and said, "Go ahead, you can have his execution, but you are just like him." So a visceral desire for vengeance, even in the name of justice, when forgiveness is better, is something that the Prophet ﷺ looked down upon. That another story by the same narrator, Anas, the son of Malik, stated that there was never a time that there was a case brought before the Prophet, murder, theft, fraud, any case where there was some type of a punishment for their actions, that the Prophet ﷺ didn't encourage the plaintiff, if the defendant was found guilty, to forgive the defendant and instead of a punishment, accept a restitution. So it's a sunnah to do this. It's a sunnah to forego punitive punishment in favor of a financial compensation for your losses. And that's what should be done, because unlike the Islamic legal tradition, the American system does not allow for posthumous forgiveness, which means that if by some chance this man does get life in prison, does lose his life, basically, for this offense, the Muslims can't then go after that point and say, "Oh, well, we think that's too much. We forgive him. We don't want him to lose his life over this. We don't want him to spend the rest of his life in a cage for vandalism." In the American system, you can't do that. In Sharia, you can. You can, after the conviction, say, "You know what? I don't want to punish this person. I'd rather have this." In America, you can't do that. So that at that point, it's too late. So we're asking people to call 407 273 8363. That's 407-273-8363. And please leave a respectful message. Leave a respectful message. If you curse and act a fool, 10 good messages to try to keep this man from losing his life will be lost for every one idiot that calls and curses. Well, we'll see you guys again next week. Next Sunday, we'll have Imam Muhammad Al-Asi here on the Call to Freedom on